Okay, folks, good evening. This is Mary Sue Lamb again. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Parkinson Foundation. I think we have a wonderful program this evening. Rochelle Gold is our speaker. And, her topic tonight is how to stay emotionally fit. We talk a lot about exercise and staying fit. Well, tonight we're going to talk about how to stay emotionally fit. I want to thank Rochelle. She is a master's degree of social.
Okay, there you go.
She's a counselor. I'm going to mute all of you so that we don't hear the background noise, and then we will open it up for questions, okay? If you have a question while we're talking, there is a chat button. You can type a question and I will monitor that. Does everybody see where their chat button is?
Yes, we do.
Okay, just type in your question there and then I will repeat the questions, okay?
Okay.
All right. Rochelle, I give this over to you. I'm going to start muting people.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad that we can be together. I thought I would borrow the framework of our present lingo and use the acronym PPP and try to get us over to PPE. Let's see if we can use this to create a positive prescription for ourselves and feel emotionally fit. So we've heard a bit about PPE that Congress has passed to provide paycheck protection for people. So what we have is a pandemic. That's one of the P's. We also have Parkinson's, and we also have a need to protect ourselves. And what we want to go to is accepting and working with the facts of our Parkinson's symptoms effectively and how to protect ourselves, and all the while staying emotionally fit. So that's the PPE. So how do we do that? How do we stay emotionally fit? Well, we've been given recently a pandemic prescription on top of a Parkinson's prescription. So we have a lot that we're dealing with. And to stay emotionally fit, perhaps we need a positivity prescription. So we are confronting going from feeling and being alone. Some of us may feel lonely, feeling limited. We have, with Parkinson's symptoms, a set of limitations already imposed upon us that we're contending with. And I think we're all now feeling the increased need to be more social, to reach out to people. And so how do we work with all of this and all the added strain and maintain ourselves emotionally and physically? I think one consideration would be to find consistency. We all may be feeling bored, actually, with just how consistent we're having to be because we have these limitations imposed on us. But to find our own way to support ourselves through this time, and I think we should focus on this time for this session, we need to find consistency in our everyday life. And I don't know if you can see it, but I jotted down a few remarks about being emotionally fit that have to do with right now, in the present, and perhaps our helpful thoughts going forward. So I'm going to start with the last one and make it the first idea. Take yourself in stride emotionally and physically. keep the upper hand when it comes to how you feel. Acknowledge a loved one. Acknowledge to a loved one when you feel low or edgy. Take limitations in stride and change your activity. Know the difference between a low mood and worry. Talk to yourself and try to understand your feelings. Be patient with yourself. Realize at this time we are out of true touch with loved ones. Concentrate on friendship. Devote yourself to a giving task. Depressive feelings are a down mood and a feeling of disinterest. Anxiety is thoughts that will not quit and a feeling of restlessness. Fear of loss of health and loved ones now is what I will call a situational experience. It's heightened at this time, and we might all be willing to agree that certain thoughts may be revealing themselves to us a little bit more so than usual. I don't think that is unusual or really refers to an emotional imbalance. We can be feeling emotionally fit, but of course we all have added concerns at this time. If we're feeling a little bit more out of sorts, there can be a fear of loss of life and relationships that require a contact fix. So if we're having a thought about someone and they're on our mind, maybe we can give ourselves an emotional lift by reaching out to that person. If we are feeling a bit more out of sorts, where we feel a little dislocated and we're not quite sure what we need, that might require some more support. We should share our thoughts and feelings with someone that we can be close to release some of those burdensome ideas through thinking about them ourselves and talking with another person, having a dialogue. If we wake up and it's a sunny morning and we're in the mood, perhaps we could master a new task. We could reach for a book, an article, a poem, or reach out to a friend. And again, it's very important that we take ourselves in stride right now, both emotionally and physically. So I guess we can hear in what I'm saying that perhaps how we're feeling right now and how we would estimate our emotional fitness has to do with degrees. Whether we are having certain uncomfortable thoughts that we can't get rid of, and maybe we can talk about how to handle that. If we're feeling more symptomatic in terms of our Parkinson's, having certain thoughts and maybe feeling more tremorous or out of sorts or having trouble relaxing, maybe even feeling a bit disoriented and missing a dose of our medication, wondering if our symptoms are going to get worse, could be a thought that someone might have. So I thought tonight we could try to emphasize a positivity prescription for ourselves. We've been given a lot of information about how to stay safe, and if we handle that in a positive way, and we can be agreeable between ourselves if we live with others, but also agreeable within ourselves and decide what's best for each of us, I think that can limit some of the anxiety. So let's just talk for a minute and break this down. When I say depressive feelings are a down mood and can bring a feeling of disinterest, It can be a feeling of being down in the dumps, that we're not quite sure right now if we're going to return to the lifestyle that we need to feel well, to go to the doctor's office, to see our children, our grandchildren, our friends, to hug someone and to be hugged. There can be an edgy feeling, a restlessness. Someone said to me today, in the last 4 days, they have felt jittery. And it was hard to figure out what really started that. Why now? Where we can feel restless. We may feel we have to rush to get things done. Rushing through a meal, not feeling calm. So perhaps also there are troubles falling asleep. So there's a need for us all to protect ourselves by a personal positive attitude, our own self-made prescription for positivity. And I do think a fundamental, basic notion of finding consistency would be good for all of us right now. On the one hand, it's sort of a paradox. We may feel stuck at home and there's too much consistency. Things just keep repeating. I think we've all had the sense, well, how am I? Well, today feels like yesterday. It feels like the day before yesterday. On the other hand, we have a chance to maybe concentrate more on putting a schedule together without interruption. And maybe we could find that uplifting. Maybe there are times when we're so busy doing certain kinds of things that we're taken off of our schedule and we don't take a medication, talking about ourselves as persons with Parkinson's. And then we start to become symptomatic and then we try to catch up with our medication. Well, perhaps this is a time to be very consistent and have the privilege of being a bit more regulated for our own sake, taking ourselves into greater consideration, which may be helpful going forward. And I guess I'd like to think that if we can hit that sweet spot a bit, maybe that would weigh in well against a bit of a low mood, some added worry that we may all be feeling. Some of us perhaps have experienced tragedy, and this is definitely, I don't think I'm understating it, a tragic time for us individually and as a human society. I think we all are hoping, we're looking and studying and researching a solution for this particular viral problem. And there's a lot of great scientific effort. And perhaps if we each concentrate on how we can protect ourselves and each feel a bit more emotionally fit, we'll feel more powerful and more prepared going forward. So, Mary Sue, do you have a thought about an area of behavior or emotional fitness that you think I should speak to more? Perhaps we should invite a comment from our participants. Mary Sue?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to, we're going to unmute everybody. Right. If you have background noise where you're sitting, I would be grateful if you could mute yourself. Does anybody have any thoughts on what they would like to discuss? What are they feeling exceptionally concerned about. Like, I just got a question about feelings of social isolation during this time. That's a question for all of us, Rochelle.
Okay, so
Does Virginia see us?
so when we say social isolation, I think
You can't see us now.
We
Isn't
can-
that funny?
so we can keep that as one concept, or we could also break it down. We're certainly missing the freedom of socializing, and that is a human need. We also are feeling isolated, so we are restricting ourselves. So we're in this sort of mixture right now where we want to protect ourselves and we also want to resume our activities and go out.
We didn't
So
sign on
I-
for the video,
There,
so we're not able to see
there,
these kind of questions.
Alex, could you please mute yourself if you're not asking the question? Okay, go ahead, Rochelle.
okay.
Sorry.
So I'm saying we've created this term, this expression of social isolation. And I think the two ideas sort of fly in the face of one another. And one of our tasks for our own inner comfort and feeling of emotional fitness is how we're going to match those two together and what formula we're each going to use, that it's very individual, so that we need a way to be social. Could people mute their
I'm
phones?
going ahead and muting everybody, okay, until we get it.
Okay,
We're just going to use the chat for asking questions, okay? All right.
okay, so
If you want to see these people,
so I comment on that we all have both the need to be,
they can look at me. They'll think it's me.
I'm having a hard time here. Okay. Okay,
if that was for me. Yeah. Should I continue? So
yeah.
in a way, we're going through this concept of social isolation right now, which in a way I was saying is a bit of an oxymoron. So we all want to be together. That's why we called in. That's why we're doing this, so that we can be a group. We can have that feeling of being social. And yet, what flies in the face of that is this need to be isolated. And so, we're struggling with that right now. We don't really want to mute one another. We don't really want to separate ourselves from one another. We're really trying to find a way to be social and be together. So that motivation in each of us is a basic core human inclination and should not be thwarted. However, we each find a consistent way to express that, which I think is a prescription for positivity. And I think it protects us emotionally from being down in the dumps. We do need to protect ourselves at home, so we're each looking for a way to mastermind how to not feel too isolated. So it's one thing to be home on our own, and that can feel positive. And then it can get to a point where it switches and we can feel too alone or isolated. I'm not sure if people can hear me. I know some of the callers' phones are muted. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, Rochelle.
Okay. I wonder if someone has a comment about this kind of double take moment that we're in. We're restricting our socializing for our own protection and safety, and we're all trying to become masters at that without a warning, up against this most natural, basic, core human desire to be with one another. And so we all have this dilemma right now to both protect ourselves on the one hand and find a positive way to feel emotionally fit. And we each come up, I suppose, with our own prescription for that.
Okay. Rochelle, I have a concern that I'd like you to address. I think one of the things that's really upsetting is that anytime you look at the news, it's 24/7 about this virus. You really, you can't get away from it. And there is conflicting news, and we're already anxious, and people with Parkinson's also suffer from more anxiety than others. Any words of advice on how to kind of decrease that additional anxiety other than just totally turn off the news? But a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what we are all doing to maintain our sanities, we're watching a lot of Netflix and TV during the bad weather. And so, you go onto your computer, you go onto your home TV to look for something. It's just around you all the time.
Okay. So, again, we're in a position where we're feeling imposed upon, perhaps, by this constant influx of news, this one issue, which of course is universally of concern to all of us. But I bet if we think about it for a moment, if we've been able to separate ourselves, and I know we all feel separated, and so on the one hand, we want to feel connected by knowing what's going on, but as you're mentioning, Mary Sue, it reaches a point, a threshold, where it's no longer news or informative or helpful or noteworthy. And I think we each need to know when that moment is and allow ourselves to talk to ourselves for a moment and allow ourselves to separate or release ourselves or switch to our own news that is family-centered, something that feels not news, but new by contrast to what we're hearing, and to allow ourselves to create, shall we say, a healthy, emotionally fit alternate universe where we go, as I mentioned, and reach for something else. It may feel like we're forcing ourselves initially, and we don't want to be isolated. We want to know what's going on and feel up on it all. But it can get to a point like on a seesaw where we've tipped too much in the one direction, as you said, Mary Sue, where it's too constant and it's crowding out our own private reflection, the natural unfolding thoughts that are who we each are. And that news being up on how we're each feeling is definitely as important. And we need that equilibrium so that we have a gauge about how we're feeling over the course of the day. And that's where our healthy individualism comes into play, where we afford ourselves the privilege and we make our own decision and we discern what we each need and we act on it. It's not just a thought, like a passing thought, or I thought I'd go look at some of the photo albums, or I thought I'd go to the piano, or I thought I'd listen to a piece of music, or I thought I'd write a letter. But to stop long enough to consciously appreciate that there really is that desire. We have not lost our personalities. We are here, we are alive, we have our inclinations, we have all of the things that bring us joy and delight us and interest us that we have always had. We do have some of the restrictions, and it's very important to be mindful to monitor ourselves so they aren't more restrictive symptoms than we have to feel. So if we start feeling encumbered and put upon and upset by this feeling that we have to stay with the news all day long, then we can shift. If we realize we have a choice, then we can consider with the people in our home and also within ourselves how we're going to dose this. Just like with doses of medication, we've all realized our treatment with Parkinson's is highly individualized. And depending on how we're doing at different times in our life, we alter the regimen to suit the moment. So in a way, perhaps I might say we have some skills that we can borrow from how we deal with our Parkinson's symptoms and how we treat ourselves and how we handle our medication and what we foster in ourselves to keep ourselves going and how we create a bigger life for ourselves, even within certain limitations. Borrow that and shift that over and use those skills that we have and take advantage of what we understand about how we keep ourselves going and create a positivity prescription. That we have a lot of wonderful capacities. We have ways that we manage our day that are consistent. We know that that can work for us. And also that there are times to shift, to get off of ourselves, to switch gears. So perhaps some of that skill set could be used now to great advantage.
Okay.
I wonder if someone has a comment about what I'm saying, maybe an example that we could all relate to.
If you've got a comment, unmute yourself or put the question in the chat.
And am I being fair? Am I being too sunny about this? Am I missing something? Or is there something to this idea of finding positivity? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm looking, I got late in this in your website here because I had a call from another state for my son. I only have one son. But I'm looking at all your notes. It's awesome, awesome, awesome philosophy here. And what you state here, I'm looking at, keeping the upper hand. And boy, do I appreciate this input here. Go ahead, though. I'm sorry.
No, we want to hear from you. Go ahead.
This is the first time I've ever added into any chat.
So since we're chatting, I love your use of the word philosophy because I think that emphasizes the individual. So,
And you're absolutely right. We gotta let ourselves stay away from being bombarded from outside information. It's bad enough that we have to have the word PD. I'll be honest with you. I hate, you tell somebody that doesn't know, you tell them Parkinson's disease. Sometimes they get scared. Oh, am I gonna get what you have? Do you ever hear, and people that don't know it, they're what is that? Am I gonna get, is it like polio? Is it a disease? Am I gonna catch it? We have enough.
you mean like a virus?
Yes.
Catchy.
Which of course we don't. I wish they would drop the word disease. Just, I don't know.
Okay.
You know, that's an interesting point. We are starting to refer to it as Parkinson's more than Parkinson's disease because it really is a condition. It's just a series of symptoms.
Yep.
You bring up a good point. You bring up a very good point.
And you know what? I get real defensive lately because people don't know. Alan Alda has it now. What's the, of course, Diamond now has it. They think maybe Muhammad Ali had it, but of course he took too many punches. They're even saying now that Hitler had it because when they had cameras politically on his body, his left hand was shaking, and he made sure the PR had no cameras on his hand. Of course, he also took a lot of drugs from his doctor, too many drugs. But you have Linda Ronstadt. You have more, maybe Robin Williams had a form. Ozzy Osbourne had a form of it, but we don't know. You know, you look at Wikipedia, some of those maybe don't have a true Parkinson's.
Okay, so may I comment on where you're going with this, position that you're taking? So the other word you're using that we can all relate to is feeling bombarded.
Yes.
I think we each and all understand as a society of people dealing with Parkinson's symptoms that we can get to a point where we feel bombarded by them. Now we know, and it's coming from the inside. So now we're being bombarded, it can feel, with this constant influx from the outside. So that's why I'm wondering out loud, we can wonder together about, on this seesaw of life, how do we grab a hold of this time and use our skills to be emotionally fit, borrowing from the consistent plans that we have each day for each of ourselves and the philosophy that's evolved within each of us, so that we carry on. If we're all here today, we each have a mechanism, a set of methods. There are behaviors and emotions that we've mastered, and we've created our own individual capacity to find a healthy constancy. Let's even borrow the word constant that Mary Sue used for the constant bombarding of the news. There's also a positive aspect of being constant. It's like being consistent. It's like being reliable. And we all know how good that can be. So we can use all these ideas to create a personal prescription for ourselves that has some positivity at its core. And I think we know when we have to excuse ourselves. For those of us that confront Parkinson's symptoms, whatever they are, there's a time when we excuse ourselves. We sit down, we lie down, we alter our eating habits. We need not to isolate ourselves necessarily, but we do need to separate ourselves in order to find an inner calm, to get rid of whatever is bombarding us. So I think these are traits and skills and capacities that we have that are strengths, and that we can borrow from our skill set at this time to help ourselves. One of the things I'm wondering, if I may ask, is in as much as any number of us are now constantly with another person, we may love them, but we may have all kinds of feelings about the constant unfolding time that we're with one other person, with adults and children in the same household, and it can be very difficult. We wish we could isolate ourselves. So I'm wondering about specifically in terms of our Parkinson's, how this is being managed. Feeling bombarded even within our homes with the other people that are around us and trying to find some healthy separation or to feel emotionally balanced, and how we find a way to sort of go into a bit of reserve or change up our activity or excuse ourselves. Is that a problem or a dilemma?
Does anybody want to respond to that? Or you can send me a chat.
I'm turning the situation on its head, and I'm wondering, for those of us with Parkinson's symptoms, when we want to excuse ourselves, if the house is full or no one's going out for the afternoon and we don't have that privacy, that's a word that we haven't used yet, how do we protect ourselves and respectfully find some privacy for ourselves in a positive way?
That's a great comment, Rochelle. And one of our listeners just sent a chat that says, as a caregiver, I could use a little more time alone or away. And that is, we are hearing from people, we have a financial assistance program for respite care, and we've noticed a 40% increase in requests for care during the month of April. And I believe it's because extended family can't be coming over to, lend a hand, or a friend can't come over.
Right.
And suddenly the caregivers it's all on one person. And
Right.
that is just difficult. It's difficult for the person with Parkinson's. It's difficult for the caregiver, and they need some alone time. I will tell all of you on the call, we do have money. We are providing financial assistance for respite care. So if you're feeling like you need it, call us. Emily, our social worker, Emily Pipish, is on this call. And we are all working. We're working from our homes, but all the phone calls go directly to our cell phones. So if this is something you need, please call us. We can help with that. I don't know where you're going to go, but you can go somewhere. You can go take a walk or go sit in a park.
Okay. So,
right.
So I think what we have to say, to be fair to all of us, is to acknowledge that this is a heightened dilemma. It's a dilemma without the present situation, and we're compelled to be in a much more limited, sort of squashed environment at home. We, on the one hand, want to open up the family system, and what's so difficult is that we have this dilemma where we don't have a set of comfortable options. It's easy to say someone should come in, but we all understand that we probably feel a pang of concern at the same time. So it's a conflict. That's another word we haven't brought up yet. That we are really dealing with multitudes of conflictual situations. And we're, again, this seesaw, as we realize that, if we can acknowledge it and put some of it into words to honestly portray whatever our struggle is, our dilemma, our conflict, our concern, when we feel we're getting to a threshold where we're not okay, I will say this, I think it's a commitment to ourselves and to one another, and it's part of mutual respect to acknowledge it. It doesn't have to be a perfectly edited set of remarks. Maybe we need agreement, some kind of agreeability as a part of our list of rules, you know, do's and don'ts, the things that are okay, that it is okay, that we should expect that we're going to have requests of one another that maybe are more profound right now. And, you know, we think about sitting down at the kitchen table, the family meeting. Maybe that's something to employ, that part of emotional fitness is the exchange and the interchange with those with whom we live. I have had an experience recently where, as a family, mother and father living together and a son and daughter in the community talked about how to handle their father's situation and their mother's exhaustion. We looked at the medication and we looked at the family system, and they realized that the time for people to phone call was between 4 and 10 at night. And the person with Parkinson's who wanted to go out and was angry about being at home was busy and happy. And they got outside, this gentleman got outside of himself, and he calmed down. His appetite was better. He was more alert. And then his wife actually was able to excuse herself. It was a modification of actually going out or having their caregiver come in.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I've spent all this time trying to get unmuted, so
We can hear you.
I heard what you said, and I think it's been great advice. I would just say it might be good to have a goal that you're going to improve your condition through exercise. I know I've got a book here called Parkinson's Treatment by Michael Olcom. Have you read it?
Sure.
And it emphasizes people who were not walking, and then with their therapy, they got to walking and things like that. And I had, from what I was told when I first got my diagnosis, I thought just maintaining was going to be the goal. But a new goal that would be more exercise might help with Parkinson's. I take a class, I'm not very good at it, but on boxing, and I think it's fun, and it's fun to be able to tell people that's what I'm doing. Sort of bragging rights, you know.
Right. So I think we all hear the contrast, the idea of not just maintaining as if there's a sense of inevitability, which I think is also bombarding us right now, relates directly to the feelings of helplessness with what's going on in the world as a whole.
Yeah.
And to shift, almost push ourselves a little. I use the word master, but to consider something where it's an improvement, a step beyond, a step forward, an added step. I think that's really a great point. To shift the goal. When there's a time of strain, that can be a great time to shift our goals. I'm thinking of a relative who had Parkinson's, and he had a number of wonderful ideas. One was that if he woke up in the morning and heard a bird sing, it gave him a wonderful positive view of life. Also, when times are difficult is when we should shift our goals and seek to improve our situation by protecting ourselves, taking a step, an added step to do something that seems like it's sort of impossible or not the right moment, but that it gives us a feeling of protection, of being positive about ourselves, of looking toward the future in a good way.
And expecting a little more of ourselves.
Fine. Great. Yeah. Yeah. So on my list was devote yourself to a giving task. So what I'm hearing you say is we can be giving toward ourselves. And that's where it should start. Because that puts us on a better footing, and then we probably can take more steps, literally and figuratively.
Do we have another comment?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
This is Adele Fleetman.
Hi, Adele.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
I
Great.
just wanted to say that I was concerned how restless I was feeling. And I
Yes.
almost would love to ask all the participants if they have had that feeling that you're out of your routine and it's, you know, you don't know what to do with yourself.
I think we'd all agree.
Yeah.
So may I ask you, have you found a way to help yourself with that? To improve your routine so that you don't feel aimless?
I'm trying to write a grant, and it's sort of an open time how much I get done. And I'm not getting into it at all. You know, it just seems like when you're in the house, you want to have it neat and clean. So it's just the four walls are starting to get on my nerves.
Are you alone?
No, my husband's with me.
Okay. So when things start to get on your nerves, that's when that restlessness presents itself?
I just think one day rolls into the next. I have to ask what day it is.
Okay. So there is that kind of being just a little bit unclear, a little disoriented. It's mild, but you're finding it hard to get up out of that. And not only to know what to do because you have the grant that you could work on, but the ability to really put yourself into it, right? To shift into it so that you feel alert about the task, that you can concentrate, and that you can give yourself the privilege, as we were saying, to step away from whatever's constant out there, whether it's the news or that it's still the four walls. And this question of how you shift yourself over to a specific, meaningful task. Have you thought of giving yourself a time frame?
Like
Setting up a structure? Because you're talking about aimlessness. Yeah.
if I was working right now, going to the office, I would feel like I wish I had time and just be at home and get this thing written. And now I've had all this time and it's just, I don't know where it's gone, but it's gone.
Right. So the structure that's positive about the office, right?
Yeah.
And the way you feel when you're at the office about yourself, your whole orientation to your work is a bit vague, right? It's not as clear. You don't have the dedicated time. You're not driving there. How might you recreate? So I think a number of us are confronted with this. How do we recreate the attitude and the focus and the mood on a task when we feel ready to step into it, so that we have the surroundings to help give us the mindset? So you're bringing up something really valuable, that there's something about a person, each of us in a physical space, that we relate to in a very specific way, that turns on our mind to a certain thought process and gets us going. And that's a particular kind of stimulus that many of us may feel we're missing. So that is a rung on our ladder that we have to step up to. That's that idea of switching our goal and going from just maintaining to improving. So Adele, do you have a thought, or maybe you've had a thought about how to recreate the environment at home, like a stage setting, to create that place?
Well, if I was doing this normally, I go to the library where everybody else is concentrating. And that to me is a really good environment to, develop what I'm supposed to be.
Okay. So are you bringing up the fact that
The library's closed?
Well,
But that was
that it's hard to be at home in a certain kind of way, where other people are also trying to find a way to be at home without bumping into one another and sticking to what it is that we personally may want to do. That it can feel odd that this is true. But even though our home is familiar, it's not where some of us at times play out a certain other routine that doesn't have to do with home. And this question of how do we excuse ourselves, back to something I said before. How do we protect our own needs for ourselves? And this is a moment, Adele, that's the opposite of taking a nap. You're talking about how to wake up your mind and have the conditions around you where you can work, where you can concentrate, not be interrupted, etc. You're having trouble finding how to unlock that opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
How about a reading buddy or a writing buddy? Somebody who would read over what you've written so far.
Yeah, it's not at that stage. It should be, but I don't have it.
Well, first get the buddy. And then
Yeah.
I'll write a page.
I think the buddy is you, Adele. So that brings up this idea of how we step a bit back from ourselves in the midst of what we're going through to try to conquer some of the imbalance and create that equilibrium again. between our attention to ourselves and attention outside of ourselves, where we can shelter at home, not just in the obvious physical sense, but that we can shelter our thought process so that we can excuse ourselves and do something meaningful for ourselves. That's why I wrote Master a New Task. So Adele, grant writing may not be new to you, but how to manage this grant at this moment under these circumstances is somewhat unique.
I'll say.
Okay.
That's fine.
You sound a little bit more than restless. And I think we can be floating a host of reactions and feelings that are relevant to now, that won't go on forever.
No.
I think we're worrying about when now is going to change and change to what, and we all have a lot of questions. But in the midst of that, how do we do something, again, to borrow this word constant and match it with consistent and positive? That if we roll that all together, those ingredients, we can each ask ourselves and think about over the course of the next day or so how we can combine those features to create an emotional balance that gives us a feeling of a little spunk, a little verve, a little more inclination to try to improve our situation.
Yeah.
So isn't it just shows how complex we are. We don't want to be separated. We don't want to be sequestered. We don't want to be forced to stay in one place. But at the same time, we're looking for how to be left alone, how to not be bombarded, how to maintain our own philosophy of life, how to have some stick-to-itiveness and find our own solitude in a good way, of our own choosing. And it does come down to that. We're still in a position to make our own choices. And that should be definitely maintained. And if we can notch it up a bit and make it an improvement, well, that would be great.
Thank you.
We all wish you good luck with this effort. It's the syndrome of the piece of white paper, right?
Yeah.
And how to get the first word. So maybe that's what we're talking about, how we can all take the circumstance, and let's just say it's a white paper without any print on it. How do we each create a bit of a positive prescription for ourselves so that we can override a bit what's going on around us and not have it be more catchy than necessary and bring us down?
Okay, thank you, Rochelle, and thank you, Del, for sharing that. I think we've got time for one more question.
Well, I like to see Rochelle's face. I've never seen her
She's
face.
not on, she's beautiful. She's not on video, my understanding is. Is that correct, Rochelle?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We will have Rochelle come speak in person, hopefully.
I am a real person.
But I can guarantee she is quite lovely to look at. Very, very lovely lady. I'm so grateful to have her guidance and her support.
But interestingly, I think that's a comment that's a reflection of everything we're discussing and everything we're going through. That we have this deep desire to see one another's face. And so I really appreciate that wonderful human desire and wish for us to be able to be with one another. And that's something to look forward to in health.
Okay, well, folks, that brings us to 8 o'clock. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to mention that we have exercise class tomorrow at 10:30. No, I'm sorry, 10 a.m. It's Power Moves. It's on the same link that you used to join this meeting tonight. Angie Ladwa is a physical therapist with Genesis in Flint. She's been teaching this for quite some time. It's very popular. Use the same link, same password, same username to access it. It's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then, oh, actually, I apologize. It's not the same link. She has her own link. We have yoga on Wednesday and Friday at 10:30 using our link. If you want to email me, I will send you Angie's link for Power Moves for tomorrow. I apologize. We do have a different link for the Angie's Tuesday class.
And it's really great. You feel
Yeah,
really
it
good
goes
when you
regular. Okay, folks, so I am going to, if anyone needs my email, it's director@Parkinson's with an S at the end of it, mi.org. And just say, send me exercise link.